Hello, welcome everyone to another episode of All Things M36 Compliance. I'm one of your co-hosts, Nikki Chappell, a Microsoft MVP and Principal Cloud Architect at Cloudway. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan.
Yeah, hello. Thanks, Nikki. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. As Nikki mentioned, for those who are new here, my name is Ryan John Murphy. I am a former Microsoft MVP and I am a data security champion here at Microsoft in the UK, where I'm a senior technical specialist. And I've been working with compliance, Microsoft Purview now for almost 10 years. And myself and Nikki, of course, love all things Purview. Today we're going to have a bit of a real good session on certifications, aren't we, Nikki, around the 400 and the 401. You yourself written an amazing blog on this, so shall we go through that?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think it was like a blog post somebody had put up mentioning about there's a Purview exam. It was SC 400. And that is in retirement and it's being replaced by another exam called SC 401. And there was a question on a kind of a LinkedIn, I think someone said, well, I'm already studying for this exam. What shall I do? Should I continue with what I'm doing? Do I need to change and everything? What is the difference in these exams? So, Microsoft had announced something new, but we thought, well, let's compare and really contrast the two exams that we had.
Yeah.
So the first exam, SC 400, was called Administering Information and Protection and Compliance in Microsoft 365. So really that was an exam that covered the full suite of Microsoft Purview. So it had elements of your know your data, so, things like sensitive information types, trainable classifiers, exact data match. So kind of going through that process. Step one is all about knowing your data, isn't it? We can't do anything until we know and classify it.
Indeed.
The next part was really about all of that data protection, the sensitivity labels, how we manage that, how we manage encryption. Then the third part was the next stage, really, of the Purview kind of roadmap, isn't it? It's, prevent data loss. So they had a section then all about data loss prevention, endpoint DLP, etc., around that area. That was kind of the focused on the data protection. Then the next part of the exam was on the governance area and the compliance area of Microsoft 365. So once we've protected our data, we need to govern it. We need to keep the data for as long as we need and then delete it when no longer required. So that part of the exam covered like the retention, records management, disposition, etc.
Mm.
Then, as part of the kind of the life cycle of the data, we also need to look at what the compliance elements of Microsoft 365. How do we investigate our data should the needs arrive? And that's where kind of e-discovery plays a really large part, e-discovery and content search, doesn't it? About how do we actually find those data if we need to have some form of investigation. And e-discovery also needs to go beyond that. We need to understand the audit logs and the activity explorers and really understand, how all of that data hangs together. So it was a comprehensive in that area. And then the last part was about the insider risk management, the communication compliance, and even the previous stuff as well, about understanding those elements. So it's kind of a three-part exam, really. We were looking at the data protection elements, the data governance and retention, records lifecycle management, and then more the compliance features. So it covered everything. So I thought it was a good exam in that sense, really, because coming into Purview, I think you really need to understand what all the elements are, even if you don't specialize in them.
Absolutely, Nikki, because one day everything that you may need is going to be a bunch of connected solutions. So you take it inside risk management there into rediscovery. I thought that particular exam was well in depth. I thought you really had to think, even, when I first took it and it wouldn't out beta that long. I actually had to sit and think about, even though I do this on a day-to-day basis, there was a few elements in that I thought of. But as you say, I thought it was a very comprehensive Microsoft compliance slash purview exam, which I really enjoyed. Like I say, it really did get you thinking. So I thought it was, very good, very complete. But this one's taken a bit of a different path, right?
It is totally. So just before we go on to the new exam, just to let everyone know that the SC 400 exam is being retired on the 31st of May of this year, so 2025. So if you've already studied or if you've already passed the exam, then have a look to see when you can renew it. If you can renew it now, you might as well renew it and sit that exam. It doesn't cost you anything to renew it, and it's a much, much shorter exam.
Mhm.
If you are planning to, if you're kind of planning your progress towards taking the exam, I think you need to sit back because yes, you could take that exam before the 1st of March, but there's a fee associated with it and it is a difficult exam. You're not going to be able to renew it. So come next year, if you want an active exam, you're going to have to go to the new 401 exam. So I think if you're not kind of like got the exam booked in, personally, I don't think I would recommend anyone to carry on studying it.
Okay, good point.
So with the new exam, it is taking a different focus. So this exam is SC401 and the certification is Administering Information Security in Microsoft 365. So I think that's the key, isn't it? We're talking now about information security. That's a subset of what Purview does. We haven't got, it's not focusing on the compliance area as well. But it's
Mhm.
also looking at information security in the wider sense, because when we're looking at the controls, Purview is only one of the controls. Information security goes beyond that. We've got, the Defender for cloud applications, for example. We've got all of the alerting capabilities in Defender. So it is kind of Purview plays a part, but there are other elements. And I think this is what the exam is trying to do. When you kind of read through the documentation, it says as an information security administrator, you plan and implement information security of sensitive data by using Purview and related services. So I think that's key there. They're saying,
Yeah,
you're not just in Purview, you need to understand the wider responsibilities. So talking about you're responsible for managing risk by protecting data inside collaboration environments that are managed by Microsoft 365 from internal and external threats and protecting data using AI services. So they're saying you need to be familiar with Microsoft 365 services, which you would have to do with Purview anyway, PowerShell, but they're then talking about now Microsoft Entra, the Defender portal, and Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. So if you're in that sort of part of the Purview world, if you're in that data protection world, this is going to be a really good exam for you because it's pulling in other areas. If you're more on, I would say, information governance, you are responsible for records management and archiving, or if you're legal and compliance and you're doing those discovery activities for kind of legal cases and things like that, then
yeah.
this exam is not necessarily going to be for you.
So would you say then, Nikki, given the information that you just provided there, this is certainly more focused on the data security aspects of our roles as Purview people?
Yeah, I think so. And I think
Okay.
this is where I think Microsoft Purview has always been, I would say, a relatively niche area. So you've got people in security roles and they would focus on Defender. They then focus on, devices, Intune, Entra. But as soon as it came to Purview, it was kind of like, oh, this kind of big, scary world. I don't really want to go there. But I think, now, particularly with the risks of Copilot and oversharing, there's a massive drive, isn't there, for how we're going to protect our data.
Absolutely, and it's a hot topic at the moment, right? M365, Copilot. And I think I've said this on other episodes as well, is the fact that people are now coming back to Purview, coming back to labeling and so on and so forth, because they're deploying M365 Copilot and they've necessarily not got it 100% right all the way through. But I think given the change, I definitely think there's a way forward for data security people bringing in the AI aspect with the SPM for AI and so on and so forth within Remit. But I'm sad to see some of those other purview elements be removed, e-discovery, one of them being an e-discovery advocate, because I was always of the impression, and maybe I'm siloed in my impression, but you know, it's great to have the defense in depth with all the data security solutions embedded and collaborated on, like you've just mentioned. But it's also just as important to have that discovery in depth as well. So, using the likes of Insider Risk Management, using the likes of eDiscovery Premium or eDiscovery Standard, if you're using that content search sometimes, if you're looking for, one particular file, whatever the case may be. And of course, specifically here in Europe, Nikki, the Priva application for subject right requests and DSARs. The Priva thing really wouldn't bother me if it was dropped out. I think that's really a bit of a niche in itself for people to run, and you really don't see data security people in there. Maybe it's just HR, legal that are in there. But the e-discovery piece did shock me a little bit. Now, I do hope there's going to be another exam, maybe a 4 or 2, that includes all of the elements that have been removed out, specifically e-discovery, because we do see it used a lot. And of course, we did announce last week that we have a new solution, data security investigations. Maybe that will be embedded into that. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it would be a shame not to have an exam on it. I've done training on e-discovery, and it's not simple. To do a basic
No.
content search doesn't take that very long. Finds everything to do with this person's mailbox. But, people want to actually find specific pieces of information, and they just tend to get overwhelmed, I think, with e-discovery cases. They either pull back nothing because they've got it wrong, or they're pulling back absolutely everything. So I think it's kind of a skill, kind of really to use the keyword query language and understand
Yeah.
how that's working, what the purpose is, and things like where data is even stored, how to kind of understand, the approaches, which locations we should be targeting as well.
Yeah, that's a big miss for people. And your blog, maybe we can share it in the YouTube bio, does a great job of giving you that understanding of your data landscape. And I would say probably majority of the time when I'm helping customers out, when they're running searches, they haven't really mapped in the right areas to go and grab that data, Nikki. So I agree with what you're saying. I do hope it's going to be part of an exam at some.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think that they've included part of the data retention in with this exam. Well, I don't think I've ever met anybody in like the security world that is responsible for data retention. That's always kind of the legal and the compliance teams. There's particular roles about ensuring that you retain data for, regulation and legal or business purposes. So
Yeah.
they're kind of completely different roles. So it does seem a bit strange. What I can do is I can share my screen now
Yeah.
and pull up the study guide. We'll share the links in the chat as well. So let
Sure.
me pull up my
Just
screen.
while you're doing that as well, Nikki, I think you raised a good point there is the fact that most of the data lifecycle management, records management, information governance, however you want to label it, I mean, I do that very minimally, I must say. And if a customer has E5, I just say adaptive scopes are the best thing for you. Don't worry about anything else, apart from your retention labels where you need an explicit exclude, of course. So that, having said that, now makes me feel there won't be another exam with the discovery in, because I would have hoped to see them two together, right? Because if data's not retained, it's not discoverable.
Exactly. Yeah.
To
The
join those
two
two
go
elements
aligned together.
together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Time will tell, I guess.
Yeah. So let me share this is the official Microsoft documentation that is just coming up now. So
I
got
can,
it
yeah.
in here. So um, this gives you the full information about the exam. So when we kind of scroll through here, gives you some background, but we're really interested in, let's go down, the skills at a glance. So it's split into 3 even parts. We're looking at information protection. So that's all about know your data, the sensitivity labels. And then we're looking at, you know, prevent data loss. So they've got the DLP in there, but they've also put in their retention. So I suppose retention is preventing data loss, because if you retain it, you can't delete it. And then we've got the third area, which is risks, alerts, and activities. So we can actually see as we kind of go through this, we've got the data classification, which I think is really, really important. I think it's really
Great.
underused. Good that it's got things like document fingerprinting in and exact data match. and how you actually go about using these. Next area obviously is the sensitivity labels. Then we're looking at extending those sensitivity labels, so through the Microsoft Purview information client, so we can actually not just use it in emails at Microsoft 365, we can classify data in a wider sense there. So
Indeed.
that I would say is pretty similar to what was in the previous exam and what you would expect. Next one, we've got DLP.
Mm-hmm.
We're extending it into the endpoint DLP world. Then we've got the section on retention there as well. So again, probably very similar to the previous exam. And the third area here is a manage alerts, risks and activities. So what they've put in here, which I think is a bit strange mix really, they've kind of put the risks in with the alerts and activities. I think they're kind of two different things really, but they've put the Microsoft Purview Insider Risk Management in there. But it doesn't seem to be anything in there about communication compliance. Nothing explicit. It's just talking about that insider risk management. Now that's all about protecting your files. Nothing about the communication. So they're obviously thinking, well, the people communicating inappropriately is not part of this, and they're obviously pushing that in with that compliance. That's more maybe of a char type of things if people are doing bullying and harassment, etc.
But Nikki, just in my mind there, I'm thinking to myself, communications compliance for me is becoming a wider topic of conversation now M365 Copilot is around. And I think it's down to the fact that they want to ensure the users in their environment are abiding by responsible AI usage. They're not abusing the service. Communications compliance can give you that. You can basically monitor the prompts into M365 Copilot. So I'm like you, and I suspect anybody listening to this who's been working with Purview for a while is probably thinking it should be in here, just even if it's just for that purpose of monitoring prompts, of supervising prompts, I should say.
Yeah. And it's still part of, I think, that whole risk management as well. You can be, there's still risks, as you say, through the communication. So I always saw those two going in hand in hand. One is the communication and one is the content part of it. But maybe it is in the exam, but it's not explicitly in here, but there's nothing here that points to communication compliance.
Well, I'll say if anybody's listening or watching that has taken the exam and they've had a communications compliance question, let us know in the comments.
That would be really useful. So then the other part of this kind of strange part, I would say, at the end, the risks, the alerts and activities, is we've gone on to the alerts. Now this is where it has changed, because before we were just looking at the Purview audit log really, so that was kind of there in the activity explorer. It's now going beyond that, because both the Microsoft functionality has changed. We can now push the Purview alerts into Microsoft Defender XDR, so that is new functionality. So you will get questions in there, so you wouldn't know how to use that. And it's also got the Defender for Cloud apps as well. So I'm not sure whether that was in there as well. So that's talking about the alerts there. And then just as a little one-liner tacked on at the bottom, just for you, Ryan, perform searches using content search. So, it's just in there as one line. So it talks about content search, but it's not talking about e-discovery there.
But again, I think, and I don't mean to be contentious here, I'm sure Microsoft there's some madness to the method here. Like, if I'm running retrospective hunting or forensic investigations, my first thought wouldn't be content search. My first thought would be Discovery or Discovery Premium if you've got an E5 license, just purely down to the fact that you can take advantage of, those premium features like the advanced index and so on and so forth, making the review set and whatnot. And even if it's just e-discovery standard, you get such a cleaner way of doing that search rather than giving content and search.
So particularly if it's some form of investigation, you want to make sure you're preserving that evidence. You would want to be able to put holds on those locations.
Indeed. Good point. Yeah, very good point. Yeah, sure.
So it is kind of very, very low. We're down to a single line here. And then we've got the new areas. Obviously, that wasn't around, AI services. The last time SC400, I think, was updated was probably 2 years ago.
Yeah,
And a lot has happened in the last two
for
years.
sure.
Copilot and Gen AI is everywhere. So there's
Yeah,
some amazing controls in Purview now, the data security, posture management for AI. So there is now this whole section on using all of that. So that is kind of a good addition.
indeed.
So that's kind of the focus. So I think the people that were probably more in the kind of compliance type areas, legals, maybe data protection officers, maybe HRs looking at that side, this exam maybe not for you. I mean, it's useful to get the wider elements, but it is much more focused on the security.
Okay. Okay.
So, Ryan, you did mention that I had a blog. So just
Yep.
quickly pull that up as well for everyone.
Sure thing.
And I've just done, as part of my blog, I just did a small comparison on the features. So I'll just quickly scroll up to the top. So this is the blog, what to do about the SC400 retirement. So I think the key thing here is, if I scroll down here, is try to look at those two comparisons. So, SC400 was the full things. It was, it was compliant, it had the data governance and security, but now it is much more on the security area. So we can see here areas where we've got some kind of changes. So in the information protection, DLP and risk management, you've got more functionality in there. And that's really because Microsoft have expanded what's there. Key thing here is on the compliance areas, most of it's been removed except content search. I think so. It's a biggie one there.
Yeah, and like I see compliance manager there as well, Nikki. That's been
Yeah, there
taken
doesn't seem
out.
to be anything in there about the compliance manager as well. So, it's quite a big chunk of work, I think, about, how we need to manage our data as part of our legislations and regulations. That's going to get more and more, particularly with the AI. We've got the EU AI Act, we've got DORA coming out, we've got more things on the NIST regulations. And I think we're only going to get more and more regulated. So actually understanding your regulatory posture and knowing what data must you retain, what data must you remove, is going to be important.
No, I completely agree. Because when I saw that straight away, I was thinking to myself, well, those templates give me the opportunity to understand my data security measures with any regulation that is in there, like you're saying with the new EU AI Data Act and so on and so forth. So again, I'm surprised that's not in there, even
Mm,
though it might be a very small part initially. But I still think it's an important part if you're a data security
yeah.
compliance admin.
Yeah, so the other thing is doesn't seem to be anything for information barriers as well. So that there's nothing explicit. So unless kind of, as I say, people have gone through the exams and there could be questions in there, but from that study guide, I wouldn't be focusing on any of those areas because it's not telling me that it's in the exam.
I can't remember having an information barriers question on the 400. Do you, Nikki? And it was a while ago we took
A
it.
while ago,
Yeah.
I can't remember whether it was there or not.
Again, if anybody remembers having an information barrier question when they did the 400, leave a comment below because I'd be interested to understand what
Mhm.
that question was. Maybe how many segments or organization units you need or something like that. Let
Yeah,
us
I'm
know.
sure I've had something where you're talking about, it's kind of allow, block, and things like, can you do an allow one way but a block the other way, that type of thing.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know. Leave a comment below, please. Let me know.
Yeah. And just to kind of finish this, I have put lots of FAQ questions at the end. So I think this is really important for people studying exams. Unless you've been in the industry for a long time, these exams are hard to do. They are there to challenge people. And if you've spent like the last year learning stuff and everything, it can be looking at this, oh, what shall I need to do? So I have tried to put lots of FAQs in the bottom of this just to kind of help you really on your kind of way with your exam.
I'll say as well, Nikki, the 400. I know a couple of people that were good people in Purview, good people in compliance that failed this exam the initial time because they went into it thinking I work with this on a day-to-day basis. But some of the scenarios that they created really got you thinking about, how many policies that you need, and so on and so forth. I think I remember I think I did get a defender for cloud app question. And I think it was the file policy from a DLP perspective, which is obviously what's called instances now. That was on there as well. And like when I got it, I was like, where's this come from? But I managed to get through it. I got a quite high mark on it. So I was really pleased by that. But working through it, I was like, "Ooh, that's got me thinking." So I'm sure now with the 401, given it's just data security aligned, if you like, especially with the new DSPM for AI stuff, for those that are not able to utilize an environment where there's an E5 license applied, Nikki, may struggle because some of what you went through there, especially inside of risk management and so on and so forth, is going to be more theoretical learning, which leads me into, did you notice whether or not on Microsoft Learn there was good content on there for the 401 just yet?
There is nothing specific. There's no learning paths, put it that way.
Okay.
So when you go onto Microsoft Learn, they've still got the learning pathway for SC 400, but there doesn't seem to be anything particular there. And I think you're right with the E5, that advanced capability, because there's a big section in there about things like endpoint DLP as well. And
Yeah.
again, that's all E5s. I think it is really important though within exams that you do go away and study everything that you can. Obviously, the
Mhm.
Microsoft Learn resources is one good way of learning. And I'm assuming because SC4 is still in beta at the moment, I'm
Yeah.
assuming it must go GA by the end of May when the other one is being retired. So I would expect at that point they will have changed the Learn and be pointing to a new section of learning materials.
Just as you were talking there as well, I vaguely remember somebody reaching out to me way back when I mentioned I did the 400, and they was working in an environment where they have business premium, I think. I did mention you do have the opportunity to create a 90-day tenant. Now, bear in mind that 90-day tenant wouldn't come with documentation. You'd have to kind of create someone imported in or create them with the users in there. You do get that tenant for 90 days. It's a lot of work whilst you're studying, but you could potentially build that environment out for some of the non free or business premium usages that you get nowadays, just so you can skill up on that also. So if anybody again watching or listening is thinking, oh no, this isn't for me, I can't get E5 access, try that 90-day tenant. Like I say, it's going to be a lot of configuration work up front, but I do think you probably have a solid 60 days to really deep dive study, Nick.
Yeah, definitely worth it. And then I think that's kind of brings us on to what we're planning to do as part of the All Things M365 compliance, this podcast and video series. We want to help you study for these exams. We're passionate about Purview. We think it's good that you have a good wide breadth, even if you don't focus on these things day by day. By having that in-depth knowledge helps you piece together, I think, all the bits of the jigsaw. So what we want to do is we're going to look and break down that SC 401 exam and kind of pull together our content. So we'll look at all of the existing recordings that we've done, because we've covered a lot of these areas already. And then we'll look to make sure we cover the gaps. I think particularly, as Ryan, you mentioned, the advanced functionality
Mm.
where you need those E5 compliance licenses. Reading documentation only gets you so far. Actually be able to see how these things work, have someone show you how to go through and configure that, can help dramatically kind of put pictures into your mind of how it all hangs together. So that's what we're planning to do over I think the remainder of this year.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really looking forward to that as well because, like you're saying, Nick, when we get together, we really go into the depths of it. We do deep dive sessions on stuff like this. So if you're a new listener or watcher to the podcast, please subscribe because we actually do a lot of purview stuff in here. And Nikki and I always, have the ability to share back our experiences as well. I work for Microsoft. I'm doing a lot of DSPM for AI at the moment, a lot of the AI integrated purview stuff. So we can take some of the scenarios that we've got, play them back into the SC401 playlist that we're going to create for you to give you not only, like Nikki just said, the theoretical part of it, where we can give you the guides for Microsoft Learn and so on and so forth, but What does that look like in the real world, though, Ryan? Microsoft's documentation states this, but what else can I get? Or what potential pros and cons do I have by doing that as well? So that's definitely a series I'm looking forward to, Nikki. Not only to build it out, but to share those experiences as well.
And we'll also get guests as we normally do. So people that are experts in these areas, we'll get them to join in. And I think having those real cases, the real scenarios, understanding what some of the problems are, it's like everything in technology, you know, sometimes there's little niggles and particular ways of working that you kind of can't understand through reading the documentation. It's only through trial and error you work out what things really mean.
Yeah, definitely. And if like what you were talking then, Nick, I think if anybody, is concerned about a particular element of the SC401, then again, drop us a message in the chat below. If you want us to configure something specifically or roll out a scenario that you potentially got that leads you, to understand the exam a little bit more, then we're more than happy to do that as well, of course. So feel free to reach out to expand your learning for sure.
So I think that's probably a really good way to end today's thing. So thank you very much for joining us at this episode of All Things M365 Compliance. So see you all next time.
Thanks very much. Bye now.